Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures, and today we're doing part 168 of our Planet Zoo mod spotlights. We've been taking a look at some of the wonderful mods people have been making and use them to talk about some of the wonderful biodiversity that we share our world with. So today we've got a few habitat or exhibit animals. That's going to be quite interesting. Got a extinct animal and a bird and a really famous, marsupial from America, and that narrows it down because there's only one native marsupial to North America. But yeah, let's get started. So we've got here, Scott has actually made a really cool pack that I'm going to split over the next three parts. So that's the British butterfly pack. So he's reconstructed or added 7 species of butterfly that can be found in Britain or, the UK. And I didn't want to do a whole pack of just butterflies, so I thought I'd split it over the next 3 parts. So this is going to be the first of the 3 parts. So we're going to starting off, we've got the Durham Argus. So that's a really cool one. So let's have a look at that really pretty one. Let's see if we can find one that's sitting in a little bit better posy. There we are, perfect. So this is the Northern Brown Argus. So they're basically a butterfly in the family Lycanidae, and are found throughout much of the Paleoarctic with all sorts of different subspecies. Though I'm not sure how actually true a lot of them are. But in terms of their Great Britain distribution, they were actually confused British entomologists for a long while. And since its discovery in Britain, it was thought to be a form or subspecies of brown argus, and as well as a species in its own right. And since 1967, all brown arguses in Scotland and England were classified as a species. But the last few years, genetic studies actually show that these colonies around the border of the 2 species still wrongly classified, and those north of England would be a argidus, and in fact they do not overlap in the UK, with the Scottish form being actually visually quite distinct, having like a small white dot and things like that. You can see that little difference there. This looks like the Scottish one. The northern English population are actually of another form called Samulsus. I believe that's actually the right species. Let's take a quick look. So let's check. Yeah, so that's a different kind of form. So there's 2 different forms in Scotland. There's, in Europe, not Europe, in the UK. So that's kind of the 2 different forms. They're all just subspecies of this guy. And it's actually quite a bit of confusion. In Europe, what we know as the mountain argus is widespread across Scandinavia and mountainous regions in southern and eastern Europe. Make sure the dog not biting on things. And this specifically rare is Britain, and that's why they're kind of protected, so they try and help these butterflies. In terms of their life cycle and kind of food plants, eggs are laid singly on the underside of food plants' leaves, as far as known as common rock roost, seems to be their sole food plant in Britain. They hibernate the larvae and are still quite small and continue to feed and grow following the spring. And like the brown argus, it is attractive to ants and often attended by them. And pupation takes place at the ground level in late May, and butterflies are on the wing from mid-July to mid-June to mid-July. So that's kind of the time. Yeah, these are some of the plants, and cool. Have a look at that. Really cool guy. So this one is, as we can see, the subspecies is kind of the Scottish form. So this is the one you'd find in Scotland. Alright, so that's really cool. Love seeing more butterflies. I think they're so rife for butterflies in this game. And I used to work at a butterfly house, so it's quite cool to see these guys getting some love. So we've got here the European comma. So this is another species from the pack, also known just as the comma butterfly. Let's have a look at these guys. Let's see if we can find one. There we are in the light. Got to look for one in the light so you can have a pretty good look at their colours. So this is Polygona C. album, or the comma. These are a generalist butterfly from the family Nymphalidae. And in terms of their description, you can see the outer wing of their margin. They don't have that very classic, rounded butterfly pattern or shape to them. They have very angulated and very dented wings. It kind of adds to the, camouflage. And folded, they look like a dead leaf. So this allows the camouflage. You can see if you look at them folded like that, it does look like a dead leaf, which helps with camouflage. And there is sexual dimorphism in this species, actually. It's very slight, though. And it concerns the intensity of coloration and silhouette of this and the size. So males typically have a wingspan of about 22 to 24 millimeters, and females 25 to 26. So females on average slightly larger than males. And the sexual dimorphism is more marked in the first generation, with which is the Hutchiniform, named after Emma Hutchinson, in May-June. They have an underside fawn orange color and an underside gold brown, with the hind wing being like a dark red color. And then the second generation, album, which is in July and spring, so after overwintering, is more reddish. Just kind of different things like that. And in terms of their taxonomy and phylogeny, these guys, as I mentioned, are from the family Nymphatidae, which is the largest species of butterfly and has 13 families. And within the genus, there is a sister group, P.C. album and Fornica. They have like larval development analyses and synapomorphy, so that means they're very similar. In both species, they have the similar habits of eating pretty much whatever. And in terms of the geographic range, they are quite a wide-ranging species. So they live in Europe, North Africa, and Asia. They're primarily woodland butterflies, living in low-densities forests with sunshine and moist soil. And they can be found in common lanes or woodlands in areas of Norway, Sweden, and Great Britain. But they can be quite, being a generalist, they can be found in quite a wider area. So they can be found pretty much from Europe to Taiwan, even in Nepal. So they're quite a wide-ranging species. So being generalists as well, the food resources are the common source. They eat mostly as larvae as well. So the nitrogen and protein are adulthood. Since they feed exclusively on plant, this makes them a phytophagonous species, so they feed a lot on plant. The larvae will go through 5 development stages called instars, where they kind of grow bigger. The larvae instars, the larger ones, like to have kind of host plants that they prefer. So these ones are a bit more specialized once they get adult and a little bit more chill. So they're polyandrous, so they will mate. So the mating system will have multiple males receiving a necessary amount of sperm to fertilize the eggs. And the pelagous female distributes her mating equally over their lifetime. So males mating increases proportionally to the lifespan. So the older he is, the more ladies he gets, is the best way to put it. The mating system of both sexes is correlated to the duration of the life, so there's no difference in mortality rates of males or females. And actually, females have mate choice, because during after mating, they can distinguish males who are reared on high quality versus low quality host plants. So basically, they get a good look at him and think, oh, he had a good upbringing, and he didn't. So they like to pick the ones that had pretty good host plants. And females generally prefer males provide larger investments, so as a form of nuptial gifts. They not allocate more resources to egg production and improves their reproductive success. So, the more they give them, the more they like to have babies with them. Oviposition. Select a host plant and carefully lay the eggs upon it. Generally favor a host plant where larval development time is minimized. Akin to preferred host plants for larvae, females prefer plants of the order Eucaltes, so those kind of plants. And despite the overall preference for plants leading to short larval development, they will vary depending between the female R and some populations prefer some host plants to others. It just depends. They have such a wide range. It just depends. And there is actually believed to be conflict. So in theory, females will prefer host plants where offspring performance is maximized, and the larvae would benefit from being able to feed on the best resources nearly the hatch site. However, this is not always observed due to pathogens, predators, and parasites. It's kind of a trade-off that they have to do. And unlike female host plant preference, egg mass is not shown to be sex-linked. It's said egg mass is more likely to be controlled by additive genes, where they're immediate compared to the parents. So that's quite cool. In life history, so they'll sit in the egg and develop in the plant on the host plants, and then they become out as larvae and have 5 distinct instars. Young caterpillars will have that cryptic appearance to help protect themselves. Though, however, when they reach the 4th to 5th instar, they make that development a little bit more kind of black and white and things like that to kind of look a little bit more like the parents. Then as pupae, they undergo kind of 1 or 2 morphs. There's like the directly developing morph for the diapause, and then they undergo in the pupae. And then we have a look at this full-grown adults we can see here. So these are the ones. In terms of predators, they can be eaten by a wide variety of birds and invertebrates like chickens, blue tits, many types of predators, and they're known parasites and diseases. And as we mentioned, there's kind of anti-predator adaptations, being camouflage and being asymptomatic colours as well. They also patterns, you can see the kind of mimic bird droppings, or they use camouflage, which is quite interesting. And in terms of kind of physiology, they can also go diapause, where they're a period of delayed sexual maturity, so they kind of will not mature in the worst times of the year. so that allows them to kind of like hold off on that. Also, thermoregulation. They can thermoregulate themselves. They spend more time under leaves as babies, as caterpillars, to protect themselves. And also there's polyphylism, which is actually, there's two phases of the morph. There's like a summer morph and then a winter-summer morph. These two morphs are determined by genes, which is quite interesting, and allow them to survive the cold winter and overposs during the summer. The others will actually go into diapause, which feature darker wings to greater protective coloration, which is quite interesting. And they are kind of affected by humans. They've been drastically affected by climate change, which means they've had a lot more like range expansion and allowing them to feed on more varieties of host plants. And they've actually encountered quite a huge shift in habitat and feeding resources in Britain. And in the 19th century, actually, the British population actually crashed because of a reduction in hop farming. Though in the 1930s, the population recovered, and now they're one of the more familiar butterflies in southern England, but also can be found in Scotland and North Wales. So yeah, very, very wide-ranging one, and really, really cool. How can you not love these little guys? So next up, we've got the last species we're covering today. So these are all done by Scott for his British butterfly pack. Does have a nice ring to it. So last but certainly not least, we've got the large white. This is one I'm also familiar with. This is also called the cabbage butterfly. Or, like the cabbage white, or cabbage moth. Even though it's not a moth, it's a butterfly. Let's see if we can find one. There we are. Perfect! So they're normally found throughout Europe, North Africa, and Asia, and they're a butterfly in the family Peluridae, and they're a close relative of the small white. So this is the large white, Paris bacillidae. So they're a large kind of butterfly that comes from throughout England, North Africa, and Asia to the Himalayas, often in agricultural regions, meadows, and parklands, and they have managed to establish themselves in South Africa and Australia and New Zealand. So the large white is a strong flyer, and the British population has been reinforced by mimosas by migrations. There have been reports of them in the northeastern US over the past century, but it's kind of dubious. And then in 2010, they were actually found in Nelson in New Zealand, where it's known as the great white butterfly, and they are an unwanted pest in New Zealand because they can damage crops. And they offered actually monetary rewards to capture these butterflies. And after 2 weeks, they captured 134 butterflies, netting $10 for each one handed in. And then a search continued as they're trying to protect them. So in terms of their eggs, they have pale yellow eggs, and if you can't even look around, you find them. A few hours prior to hatching, they become black and they become more transparent. And then the larvae will experience 4 moltings and 5 instars. So the first instar will follow the hatching of the egg and the larvae, and as they get bigger, they will kind of enter the second instar. They have tubercles covered in brown black hair as they get bigger, and then they kind of look similar in appearance, but they will start to get a little bit bigger and a little bit more hairier and look camouflage. So both male and female, they look pretty similar. Their wings are white with black tips and forewings. The female will actually have 2 black dots on each forewing, and it's actually a great way of camouflage, especially on the underside, which is like a palish green. So that's kind of a great way to camouflage themselves. And for male, the underside is creamy white, and another thing as well for females is a little bit different as well. It's kind of a little bit more kind of softer colours. So there's not huge sexual dimorphism, but it's easy to show. I don't think the mod actually shows a sexual dimorphism, but it would be easy to show. You can look at the Wikipedia and it shows it pretty well. In terms of their habitat, they do prefer large open spaces, as well as farms and vegetable gardens. Some favourite locations include like walls, fences, tree trunks, and other things. And they actually prey upon, wild and cultivated crucifer and Brussels sprouts and cabbages, hence the name cabbage butterfly. So they do impact cabbages. So the lifestyle's not too different from other species. I kind of already went through there. Another cool thing is migration. So migration is found mostly throughout Europe, Eurasia, and there's some seasonal fluctuations, but the northern populations tend to be augmented during the summer migration from butterflies in southern areas. So there is, pretty much a wide way they can, and they also migrate, typically observed in the disturbance. So they have an atypical migratory pattern. So they fly towards the poles in the spring and then towards a more temperate equator during the fall. However, they fly in random directions, excluding north in the spring and little return migration. So it's kind of general trend of going up and down, with the seasons, but they don't really, particularly follow a particular migration like the monarch butterflies in America do, for example. In terms of hibernation, large white birds have actually not been seen to overwinter, nor hibernate overwinter. However, they have been observed to hibernate in the south. And they do not consider to have much of territorial behaviour. It's actually been suggested that this could be a reason why there's no significant sexual dimorphism, because they don't need that to defend, because they're not very territorial. In terms of ecology, large whites have a preference for what types of food they will eat. They show a preference for certain plants. They show that they rely on these food species to survive. So like plants with mustard oil glucosides as well. However, it's more benefit the species to use mustard oils, so things with kind of mustard oils. Is that some plants containing alkaloids and steroids, which reduce and inhibits their reproductiveness, so they tend to kind of avoid those plants. So the source of food of larvae often is things like cabbages, radishes, and on the other side of leaves, and adults feed on flower nectar. So predators, they have often preyed, do not have specific groups of predators, but they can be preyed on most things, so like wasps and things like that. Some species of mammals, some reptiles, so just pretty much anything that will eat them. And they actually have an unpleasant smell, which deters a lot of animals, and you can see this coloration. They do have this display color to try and scare them off. They also use asomapomorphs, not entirely related to myrmecory, but they will kind of benefit from the larvae look like species of other butterflies that are more poisonous. That's a good way to avoid predators. And in terms of their role as pests, so they're doing perfectly fine, but in areas, as I mentioned, such as New Zealand, they do prey on things like cabbages and Brussels sprouts and cauliflower, turnips, so they can damage a lot of crops, so that's why in a lot of places they are worried about them, especially with those kind of crops, as they can be quite damaging. But yeah, really, really cool. You don't love a large white. Very, very cool. So that's all Scott's mods. Scott's done a wonderful job, as per usual. So next up, we've got by Tosco DS, we have got the sand boa, Arabian sand boa. So let's have a look at this, guys. Let's see if I find the light. Look at this cutie. They're actually all quite cute, don't you think? There's not actually one, this is the one that's kind of at the best light, but still looks rather awesome. Anyway, so this is Eryx jacari, also known as the Arabian sand boa, or the Jacar's sand boa. So these guys are a species of snake found in the family Boidae, so they are a type of boa. This species is endemic to the Arabian Peninsula, when they spend most of their time, in the sand, buried in the sand. So the specific name Jacari comes from the common name Jacari, which is in honor of Amatam Sadush Jakar, who has lived from 1844 to 1911, who is an Indian surgeon and naturalist, so it's kind of to honor him. So these guys are a small species that grow to a total length, including their tail, of about 38 centimeters, or about 15 inches. And you can see their eyes are very small and located at the top of their heads. They do have quite a wedge-shaped snout that allows them to dig into sand. The snake's coloration, you can see, is yellowish grey or sandy brown speckled with white flecks and kind of these markings. So you can see it's pretty accurate there. Their geographic range, they range from, they live in the native to the Arabian Peninsula. The geographic range includes Saudi Arabia, Oman, Yemen, Kuwait, and southern Iran, with a small number of specimens actually found in Kazakhstan province, Bushehr province, and Kerman province. So that's quite cool. In terms of their habitat, they tend to live in deserts, living semi-underground in soft soil or sand. And in terms of their behavior, they are largely nocturnal and are tolerant of a wide range of temperatures. And during the day, it buries itself deep in the sand but moves towards the surface at dusk. Here it remains slightly below the surface with just eyes pointing out, ready to pounce with a sideward flick of its head. Of any small creature that pants, so basically just wait in the sand with its eyes out, kind of like a crocodile how it looks out of the water, just watching for anything to come close. And they pretty much prey on any small creatures that they can, catch. That include short-fingered geckos, the Balaga rock gecko, and worm lizards, but also I imagine small mammals and amphibians. And there's not really many amphibians in the desert, but anything small enough they'd probably eat around, and small reptiles and things like that. But unlike other members of these guys, they actually lay eggs. Unlike other boas, most boas give live birth. These guys will lay eggs instead of giving birth to live young. And the only other boa species known to do this is the Muller's sand boa. And the female will lay a small clutch of eggs that will hatch at about 66 days of a temperature about 33 degrees, or about 91 degrees Fahrenheit. Hatchlings don't develop an egg tooth, which would help them break out of the egg. Instead, their mothers actually help the babies break out of their shells, which is quite cute. And in terms of their conservation status, they are listed as least concerned by the IUCN, and this is because they have a very wide range and common, at least parts of its range, and they have no particular threats that have been identified, so they're doing relatively okay. They're also kind of common in the pet trade, not super common, but you can get these sand boas. Often people, don't really get them because they're not really good display animals. They spend most of their time hiding, but they are still quite cool. Really, really awesome. And another great mod. How can you not love a nice mod by Tosco Diaz? Always killing it with their mods. So next up, we've got another Great Cakes mod. How can you not love a Great Cakes mod? So we have got here, this is another species of Chalicotherium. So this is the species Borisica, what's the full? Borisica Baupartidalis. So these guys are a species of, Chalicotherium, as I mentioned in the last video. They're a group of perissodactyl or otone ungulates. So they are related to tapirs, rhinos, and horses. But these were almost like gorilla horses, so they were more browsers. They had these claws that they used to they were either knuckle walking, or some were like this in Meropus, and they were kind of walked around in their claws. They would use their claws potentially to kind of grab at plants and branches, but also potentially for defense. So they would have used their hand claws to pull down branches, and would have likely lived as kind of browsers, so they would have been much more adapted for grazing or browsing on trees, because as at the time most of these Chalicotheriums were doing really well. There was a lot more trees and a lot more forests rather than a lot of the grasslands that we have today. But these guys are from the late Oligocene, so about 30 or so million years ago. Late Oligocene was about 33 million years ago. 33 to 23, so about 20 million years ago, 23 million years ago. And these guys would have been bipedal browsers. And they are in the family Schizotheridae, so they're related to Tylosalus, which was the one that we covered a little while ago. So they are related to them, which is quite cool. And nothing too much differentiates it, but just another cool species to have. And look at these cute little babies there, cute little foal. It is quite a cool guy. I love seeing extinct animals. There's not really a lot to talk about them, but Great Cakes really does a great job with their designs and things like that. It really makes them, because I feel like animals like these often get kind of forgotten, and when people do paleo art of them, they often look kind of weird, because they almost just forget what mammal anatomy is like. But Great Cakes mod is a great example of someone that really does take the time and really makes them look like they're an animal that would actually exist. So that's a really great one for Great Cakes mod. So next up, we've got another one. We've got Monsoon, who's given us a wood duck. Excuse me, I'm just going to get the cat out of here. Goodbye. Okay, so here we've got the wood duck. So this is Axis bonata. So these guys are a partially migratory species of a perching duck that is found in North America. And the male is actually considered one of the most colourful North American species of waterfowl. So they were first described by Carl Linnaeus in the 10th edition of the Systematica Natura as Anas spona, but they were now considered their own kind of genus. Not Anas, which is the same as mallard. So their name, the genus name comes from an ancient Greek word for unidentified diving bird mentioned by Aristotle. So they either means bride, so it's basically like a real pretty one. So in terms of their size, they're a medium-sized perching duck. A typical adult is about 47 to 54 centimeters, or 19 to 21 inches long, with a wingspan of about 66 to 73 centimeters, or about 26 to 29 inches. And they range in weight from about 454 to 862 grams, or about 16 to 30 ounces, which is about 3/4 the length of a mallard, and it shares its genus with the mandarin duck. So you guys may be more familiar with the mandarin duck, but these guys are kind of the American version of them. As you can see, the adults have quite a beautiful pattern to them. They have multicolored iridescent plumage with like red eyes and this white flare down its neck. The female typically is, like most species, is typically a little bit less colourful, but they still have that iridescent They have the white eye ring and throat. Sorry, the animals are getting on top of me. But you can see they've kind of got like that whitish there. But they do both have the crest on their head, and they also have that kind of iridescent blue-green on their tail edge of their wings. The male's call is like a whistle, and the female has a drawn-out squeal. And when flushed, they have a creak sound as an alarm call. So in terms of their distribution, they are year-round residents in some parts of the southern range of the US, but in the other parts they will migrate south for the winter. They overwinter in the southern US near the Atlantic coast. About 75% of wood ducks in the Pacific Flyway are non-migratory, but due to their attractive plumage, they're actually quite popular in waterfowl collections, and have actually frequently been seen in places such as Great Britain as escapees. And populations have actually been temporarily established in Surrey in the past, but not as self-sustaining in the fashion as the closely related mandarin duck. Along with the mandarin duck, they're actually considered an invasive species in Wales and England as illegal to release them into the wild. Given their native distribution, the species is also potential and natural vagrant to Western Europe, and they've been recorded such as Cornwall, Scotland, and Sicily. Some observers consider them may relate to wild birds, but due to their popularity in captivity, it's very likely they could just be escapees, even though vagrants is definitely possible, considering, they have all sorts of different ones. And there's believed to be a small feral population of wood ducks in Dublin, which is quite cool. Let me just make sure that's right. Yeah, there we are. So we'll have a look at the male again, or we'll have a look at the babies for breeding, because these guys are quite cute little guys. So their typical breeding habitat is in wooded swamps, shallow lakes, marshes, and creeks in the eastern US, the west coast of the US, and parts of southern Canada, and even the west coast of Mexico, to get their name from being the only species of duck that perch and nest in trees. In recent decades, actually, their breeding range has extended towards the Great Plains, and currently most breeding occupies in the Mississippi alluvial valley. So unlike a lot of ducks, they actually will nest in cavities in tree, which are they call perching ducks, and will take advantage of nest boxes in wetland locations. Other species actually may compete with them for nesting cavities, such as mammals and birds of prey, and occupy these nest boxes meant for wood ducks. So wood ducks may end up nesting up to a mile away from their water source as a result, and females line their nests with feathers and other soft materials, and at the elevation provide some protection from such as hawks, raccoons, and owls. Unlike most ducks, though, they actually have sharp claws and use them for perching in trees, and in southern regions can produce 2 broods in a single season, and the only North American duck that can. Typically, wood ducks will lay their first egg from February to April, and females typically lay 7 to 15 eggs, which are incubated for an average about 30 days. However, if nesting boxes are placed too close together, they may actually lay eggs in the nest of their neighbours, which may lead to up to 30 eggs, and is often or more with unsuccessful incubation is known as nest dumping. So they kind of just dump them on someone else to deal with. The day after they hatch, they are precocial, so they basically come out ready to go out the box. So they climb out of the opening of the nesting cavity and jump down from the nest tree in the ground. The morning after the hatchling, the hen will actually leave the nest to feed and make sure it is safe for her chicks. When she decides it's safe, she uses a maternal call to call the chicks out, and they'll nest typically over water to brace their fall. When chicks dump down, they can jump down as high as 50 feet, and the mother then calls them to her and guides them in the water. And the ducklings can swim fast and find their own kind of way, and they prefer nesting over water so the young can have a soft landing. And in terms of food and feeding, they are dabbling, so they will often feed on the surface rather than diving underwater, or they will graze on land. They will feed on berries, acorns, and seeds, but also insects, which makes them omnivorous. And they also can crush acorns after swallowing them within their gizzards, so they can use their gizzards to destroy things, like a lot of little birds can. So in terms of conservation, they actually sadly were in severe decline in the late 19th century due to severe habitat loss and market hunting for both their meat and plumage in Europe. At the beginning of the 20th century, they became rare and almost disappearing in most areas. But luckily, the Migratory Bird Treaty was established in 1916 with the enactment of the US Migratory Bird Treaty Act of 1918. They actually finally began to repopulate, and by enforcing these existing kind of hunting regulations and protecting woodland, they began to grow back. The populations began to rebound in the 1920s. The erection of nest boxes in the 1930s also further assisted, and it seems that multiple studies have proved that these artificial nest sites for waterfowl is quite beneficial, and these duck boxes have been found to be less effective than natural hollow dead trees, but remain overall beneficial to the population. Probably just there's not quite a lot of many trees. Landowners as well, is they can encourage wood ducks by building wood duck nest boxes near lakes, ponds, and streams. And some places have actually, such as Minnesota and Florida, have adopted them as their mascot and kind of released a lot of nest boxes out into the wild to allow them to use them and kind of help their populations. Other things that also really helped is the expansion of the North American beaver has also increased their range as well, as they create that ideal habitat for the wood ducks. And they've also increased a lot, and the increase has been due to work that many people constructing these boxes and conserving vital habitat. So they are doing quite well now, so they're a great conservation success story. So yeah, really, really cool. Definitely love these guys. Yeah, it's a wood duck. Monsoon, always does a great job with those. But last but certainly not least, we've got another American animal. We've got a marsupial. We've got here the Virginia opossum, done by Great Cakes Mod. So another winner by Great Cakes, always really good. So we've got here the Virginia opossum, also known as the North American opossum. So these are a member of the opossum family found in southern Canada to northern Costa Rica, making it the northernmost marsupial in the world. Often commonly referred to as the possum. They're a solitary nocturnal animal about the size of a domestic cat and are opportunists. So in terms of the name, they are the original name opossum that comes from the Angolan wapitheta, which means white animal. Even though they're frequently called possum, possums are typically referred to other marsupials such as, the kind of bush-tailed possum from Australia. And that's why they're often referred to as possums. In terms of their range, though, they seem to have evolved in South America, but spread into North America as part of the Great Biotic Interchange about 3 million years ago in the Pliocene. And Didelphus was actually one of the later migrants and only arrived about 800,000 years ago into North America. In pre-European settlement, it ranged as far north as Maryland, southern Ohio, Indiana and Illinois, Missouri and Kansas, and the clearing of dense forests in these areas further north by settling allowed these opossums to move northward. Elimination of their main predators as well has also helped continue the expansion, but since 1900 they actually moved into most of New England, New York, Quebec, Ontario, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, South Dakota, and most of Nebraska. In areas such as Rhode Island and Waterloo region has had sightings, but is believed to be likely because of climate change getting warmer, since these guys aren't quite as warm-blooded as most mammals, so they're believed to be, these guys are kind of taking advantage of the warmer weather and moving north, which is quite cool. And they were not originally native to the West Coast, and they're actually intentionally introduced into the West during the Great Depression as a source of food, but they now occupy the Pacific Coast, and the range has been expanding northwards. So they vary considerably in size, with larger specimens being found in the north and smaller specimens being found in the south, so that's Bergman's rule. They measure between 33 to 55 centimeters, about 13 to 22 inches from the base from the snout to the base of their tail, with the tail adding another 25 to 54 centimeters, or about 9.8 to 21 inches. Males are slightly larger, with an average body length of about 40 centimeters, an average tail length of 29 centimeters, or about 16 to 11 inches, while females are about 40.6 centimeters and 28, so a little bit smaller. And weight for males is typically between 2.1 to 2.8 kilograms, or about 2 to 6 pounds, while females is between 1.9 to 2.1, or just about 4 pounds. Their coats are you can see a dullish grey, other than the white in their faces, and they have also long, hairless, prehensile tails that are able to use to grab things. They also have hairless ears and a long, flat nose, and they actually have 50 teeth, which is more than any of North American mammal, and opposable claws that allow them to climb onto things, which is quite interesting. And what's very interesting as well, surprisingly for such a successful species, the Virginia opossum has one of the lowest encephalization quadrants of any marsupial, so its brain's actually only 1/5 the size of a raccoon, so it's got a very small brain, but it's still doing quite well. So in terms of kind of behavior, so the quite famous expression is playing possum. So when threatened, they'll either flee or take a stand. In a player threatening, they'll kind of bare their teeth. And if this does not work, they will feign death in response to extreme fear. So I've referred to the term playing possum. So they kind of will, in active state, they kind of lie motionless with their eyes open, toes, tongue hanging out, and feet clenched. and they'll also release a green fluid from the anus, which has a yuck odor, that kind of putrid odor to get rid of predators. Heart rate will then drop, and breathing is so slow it can be hard to detect. So they can actually be this way for several hours, and this is a good way that they use to defend themselves. And playing possum is actually in response to the threat of ongoing traffic, often results in death. So typically, sometimes when you're crossing a road, they'll think you see a car, play dead, and then they get run over with the car anyway. So they're not playing dead, they're actually dead, which is a little bit sad. But yeah, anyway, in terms of their diet, they are omnivorous, is sometimes said to be insectivorous. So they will feed on a wide variety of foods, including invertebrates, carrion, eggs, fish, amphibians, small mammals, and other small animals, just anything they can get their mouths on, really. Insects such as grasshoppers and beetles will actually make up a bulk of their diet. Eating a lot of ticks as well. They eat a lot of ticks. And actually prevent the spread of Lyme disease and Rocky Mountain spotted fever, as they eat a lot of ticks. So they're great for the environment. Small animals, including young rabbits, voles, mice, rats, birds, snakes, lizards, frogs, crayfish, gastropods, and earthworms will all be found. And they've been found to be very resistant to snake venom, so that allows them to eat them as well. And plant foods they'll eat mainly in late summer, autumn, and early winter. That includes raspberries, blackberries, apples, acorns, vegetables, grains, bulbs, and things like that. And they quite like those. And even in captivity, they have been known to engage in cannibalism. In terms of seasonality, they are mostly active during the spring and summer. They do not hibernate, but just reduce in activity during the winter. They may not leave its den for several days, and both male and females are greater risk of injury during the breeding season. And males will extend their range in search of females, but which puts them at greater risk of being hit by a motor vehicle. And females carrying young are typically slower because they're carrying babies on their back and have to forage earlier in the evening and later at night, which also makes them more at risk from, getting hit by a car. So in terms of reproduction, let's talk about reproduction as we look at these cute little guys. Look at this cute little baby. I love opossums so much. So reproduction, the breeding season for these possums can be early as December, but continue through October, and most born between February and June. A female opossum can have between 1 to 3 litters per year. During the mating season, the mate attracts the female by making clicking sounds with his mouth. The estrus cycle is about 28 days and lasts 36 hours. Gestation lasts about 11 to 13 days, and the average litter size is about 8 to 9, but sometimes over 20 can be born. They have a very high mortality rate for their young, so only 1 in 10 offspring will make it. Being marsupials, they are born, very, very small. They're actually born at the size of a honeybee. Once they come out through the median vagina or the central birth canal, they actually will climb up to the female's pouch and latch to one of her 13 teats, and then they'll remain latched for about 2 months, and in the pouch for 2.5 months, and then the young will climb on their mother's back and kind of hang out with them and spend the remaining of their time together, where they'll learn survival skills, and then once they reach about 4 to 5 months old, they will leave their mother. And like all female marsupials, they have bifold reproductive systems. They have 2 vaginas, 2 uteri, and 2 4 ovaries. And also the same with the males, so their penis has 2 heads, which is quite interesting. In terms of their lifespan, very interestingly, unlike most marsupials and most animals, they have actually a very short lifespan for their size and metabolic rate. They have a maximum lifespan in the wild for about 2 years, and even in captivity, they can only live for about 4 years, which is very unusual considering their size. You'd think they would live a bit longer. The rapid senescence of opossum actually reflect they have few against predators, and they would usually not really have a good chance of living very long, so they're not under selective pressures to kind of allow for a long lifespan. But in terms of their relationship to humans, they're not considered dangerous to humans, so they can often that their open mouth hiss can often be mistaken for rabid behavior. They're actually naturally resistant to rabies because of their lower body temperature, since they are a marsupial, so they're actually a bit more resistant to rabies. However, they can carry diseases, so they can host parasites that carry diseases such as tuberculosis, leptospirosis, and tularemia, among others. Like raccoons, though, they can often be found inhabit in urban environments, feeding on pet food, rotten food, and garbage. They're often considered common predator of poultry in North America, and research has actually shown that the proximity to humans has actually caused an increase in body size in these opossums. And though somewhat mistaken for rats, they are not closely related to rodents or any other placental mammals. They are a marsupial, so they're more closely related to a kangaroo than they are to a rat that you'd find in North America. They're also a favourite game species, especially in southern regions, and people do eat them. And although they're widely distributed, they have appearance in folklore, and they're often in animation. They often use them to depict hillbillies. There's also the Possum Day. And there's also one that was actually a cross-eyed that was born in Leipzig Zoo that became a celebrity. But yeah, quite cool. A really, really awesome animal. Really do love these little opossums. Don't know why their eyes balding out. Probably a bit of a glitch. But yeah, really, really cool. Definitely a big fan. So, yeah. A little bit of a shorter one today, which is good. But I really hope you guys enjoy this one. So thank you, Scott and Great Cakes Mod and Tosco and Monsoon. All did a really great job with these mods. So, yeah, I really, really, really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified of anything. So, yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.